Welcome, everyone. Today we are diving deep into one of the most infamous criminal cases in American history, the case of Ted Bundy. But we're going way beyond the shocking headlines. We're going to break down the psychology, the timeline, and the truly chilling legacy of a man who proved that sometimes monsters look just like the person next door.
So, on the eve of his execution, Ted Bundy said these exact words. Think about that. He wasn't trying to sound like some monster from another world. No, he was positioning himself as a product of our world. It's a statement that is just as unsettling today as it was back then, because, well, it forces us to confront a really terrifying possibility.
And that really gets us to the absolute core question of this entire case. Was this a moment of genuine clarity from him? A final, desperate warning to the world about the dark forces that created him? Or was this just Ted Bundy, the master manipulator, putting on one last incredible performance for the cameras? To even begin to answer that, we have to start at the very end of his story.
Yeah, that's right. To really get a handle on who this man was, we have to listen to the story he told in his final hours. This was his last-ditch effort to try and explain the completely inexplicable.
So, in a sit-down with Dr. James Dobson, Bundy basically laid out his defense. He described this progression, right, from an early exposure to softcore stuff to then hardcore, violent pornography that he claimed fueled his fantasies until he just had to act them out. But, and this is so important, even as he's blaming this external force, he's very careful to say, "I take full responsibility." It's a classic Bundy contradiction, isn't it? He's presenting himself as both a victim and a perpetrator in the exact same breath.
Okay, but to really understand that so-called confession, we have to rewind the clock. Because the most terrifying thing about Ted Bundy wasn't what he said at the end of his life. It was a life he lived before he was caught, hiding in plain sight, right behind this carefully built mask of total respectability.
I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. On the surface, this guy was everything you'd want in a young, ambitious man. He worked on political campaigns. He even volunteered at a suicide hotline. Can you believe that? Gaining access to people's most private, deep vulnerabilities. But underneath that handsome, charismatic facade was a man just seething with resentment, living a parasitic life that was completely built on lies.
So you have to ask, where did all this darkness come from? Well, psychologists point to these key fractures in his early life. The lie about his birth, for instance, created this deep-seated shame. Then, the rejection by his first girlfriend, a woman he totally idealized, seemed to just crystallize his rage towards women. And each of these events just built on the last, leading to the moment he discovered his own illegitimacy. It's really no coincidence that his violent rampage began shortly after he took what he saw as his ultimate revenge on his ex-girlfriend.
And all that darkness, well, it had to go somewhere. Which brings us to the crimes themselves. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy cut this bloody path right across America. And in doing so, he created a climate of fear that gripped the entire nation.
His campaign of terror was just relentless, and it was geographically huge. He was like a chameleon, moving from state to state, always managing to stay one step ahead of the police. His 2 escapes from custody in Colorado are legendary. They reveal this arrogant intelligence and a deep conviction that he could outsmart absolutely everyone. And his final, brutal rampage in Florida, that was the desperate, horrifying act of a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose.
Let's just talk about the sheer audacity of his first Aspen escape because it speaks volumes. He was acting as his own lawyer, so he was left uncuffed in the courthouse library, and he just jumped out of a second-story window. He survived for 6 days out in the wilderness, which is a testament to his resourcefulness and his absolute refusal to be caged. But this act wasn't just about freedom, it was a performance. It showed his grandiose sense of self-worth. He really truly believed he was invincible.
So, how'd he do it, right? How did this seemingly normal guy get so many intelligent young women into his car? Well, he had a chillingly consistent method. He exploited their kindness. He'd put his arm in a fake sling or a cast on his leg and ask for help carrying books to his tan VW Beetle. He preyed on their trust. You see, charm and deception were his real weapons, which made him so much more dangerous than just a simple brute.
Okay, so this brings us from the what of the crimes to the really crucial question of why. To even begin to understand Ted Bundy, we need to look at him through the lens of forensic psychology and explore the diagnosis that truly defines him: psychopathy.
Now, psychopathy isn't just a synonym for evil.
It's a clinical diagnosis. It's characterized by a profound, almost unbelievable lack of empathy. A psychopath just doesn't process emotions the way that most of us do. Things like guilt, remorse, love, these are basically foreign concepts to them. And that emotional void, that is the absolute key to understanding how someone like Bundy could commit such horrific acts without even flinching. The Hare Psychopathy Checklist, or PCLR, gives us a clinical framework here, and Bundy is a textbook case. I mean, he checks every box. And these aren't just descriptions, they're symptoms of his disorder. Take grandiose sense of self-worth. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to see it in action. By insisting on representing himself in his own capital murder trial, Bundy literally turned the courtroom into his personal stage. He wasn't just a defendant, he was the star of his own deadly show.
The psychologist Hans Eising's theory gives us another angle. Bundy perfectly fits this profile of a criminal personality. He was high in cold, aggressive psychoticism, high in charming, thrill-seeking extroversion, but, and this is the crucial part, he was low in neuroticism. Now, what does that mean? It means he wasn't some frantic, anxious killer. No, he was cool, calculating, and completely emotionally detached. He was a predator in total control of his hunt.
So after all this time, why are we still talking about Ted Bundy? Decades later, why does his name still give us chills? Well, it's because his case fundamentally changed how we understand crime, law enforcement, and maybe even the nature of evil itself. First and foremost, you have to remember the human cost. He confessed to 30 murders, but investigators, to this day, believe the real number could be far, far higher, maybe even 100. 30 confirmed lives, families, and communities were just shattered by his actions, and that number alone cements his dark place in history.
But his impact goes way beyond the body count. For many people, Bundy became the archetype of the organized serial killer, intelligent, meticulous, and scarily good at blending in. His cross-country spree actually forced law enforcement agencies to start cooperating in new ways, and it was pivotal for the FBI's brand new behavioral analysis unit. Oh, and his trial in Florida, it was one of the first to be nationally televised, bringing forensic evidence like that infamous bite mark right into the public's living room.
Ultimately, I think Bundy's most enduring and most chilling legacy is a question. He wasn't some shadowy figure lurking in the alleys. He was the handsome law student, the friendly political volunteer, the supposedly concerned boyfriend. He proved beyond a doubt that the most terrifying evil is the kind that smiles right back at you. And that leaves all of us to wonder, how well do we really know the people in our own lives?